Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Shannon Ford, the legend, the king, the
And the
mystery.
Queen.
Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
I haven't talked to you in a while, and we have a lot of catching up to do.
Yes.
I did some research on you. I realized that were you born in Washington, D.C. or the Washington, D.C. area?
I was not. I was born in Atlanta and grew up in Macon, Georgia in the first 4 or 5 years of my life. And then my dad got a job at NASA, actually, and we moved to D.C. so that he could pursue his career at NASA. And so I grew up in D.C. So I just tell everybody I'm from D.C. It's so much easier.
Have you gone back to Macon, Georgia?
I have. And since I didn't know anybody there, I have family there in that area, but yeah, I haven't spent much time there. But Atlanta, yeah, but I haven't played much in Macon.
Do they have a any kind of shrine to my man James Brown in Macon, Georgia?
They should. I'll bet you they do, though. I bet you they do. It's that and Allman Brothers. I think that's like some of their biggest export, James and the Allman Brothers. But yeah, they ought to.
Yes, Macon. Like, I didn't know about Macon, of course, until I found out about James Brown. But did you ever think that you'd ever get into NASA or follow in your father's footsteps?
No, not even close. I had gotten deep into the drumming at around 10, but I always admired and was fascinated by what he was doing, and we never missed a moon launch. Because I grew up in the 60s, and that's when 60s, 70s is when he worked for NASA. So we would always be around the TV anytime anybody was landing on the moon, or even John Glenn was in orbit, any of that. I was absolutely fascinated by it, but I did not feel a need to go that direction.
Are you still into it at all, or do you?
I kind of follow it, especially I'm around my dad a lot more because I'm in Florida and they're in Florida. So I see my parents a lot more. But he keeps me up to date on it. He's not really involved much anymore. He's been retired for years.
Okay.
But yeah, man, he was a rock star. NASA in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when you wanted to be there. So yeah, he would send me like photographs from the Hubble Space Telescope and stuff like that when all that was going on too. That was exciting.
So speaking of rock stars, did you?
Yeah.
What made you want to decide to play drums? Did you want to be a rock star, or did you just say, you know what, I want to play Broadway shows when I grow older?
No. No, I did not gear myself for that. That just came about. I think like many of us have that. And many of us who came to New York prior to the last 10 years, I'm seeing more young people that want to do theater now, which I think is great. But no, my thing was just playing in bands. I saw Ringo on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I, just saw live bands, and I thought, that's cool and shiny and noisy and fun. So I want that. I was like 8 or 9 years old. I just saw an actual drummer playing in a Dixieland band at a pizza joint. I would just be completely taken with that. So yeah, I got the fever right around 10 years old, really.
And your parents got your drum set shortly afterwards?
They did, yeah. Christmas. Got a nice, it's a weird finish. It was a bass drum, a Ludwig bass drum, but it had that blue swirly thing, blue and silver swirls. I really wish I still had that, but yeah.
Did you start out taking lessons and starting out on the pad?
Yeah, I was in school band. And actually 5th grade. I had to play clarinet in 4th grade because there were too many drummers signed up. Did that ever happen to you? Because I hear that story a lot from drummers who were in school bands. Like I had to play something else the first year. So I had a band director who actually said this. He said, all right, he was doing like sectionals in a band rehearsal one day. And he goes, okay, everybody drop out. The drums drop out. Now just the instruments. That's not right. That doesn't sound dignified at all. And then I got private lessons. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for getting me the private lessons and driving me there. And because I was deep into it. And deep into school band. I was in drum corps a little later on. Yeah, and then playing in bands.
So it was Ringo and who else?
I don't know, Charlie Watts. There's a guy named Sandy Nelson who used to do like instrumental stuff in the 60s. Teen Beats was this album that I was listening to. He was like a early surf rock and roll Gene Krupa kind of guy. And so I was into that. And of course, my dad had these big band records. So I was listening to Krupa and then would see Buddy Rich like on the Tonight Show and stuff like that, which would absolutely freak me out. I would see him do that, those little solos, just get up from the desk and go do a solo, with that band. And it was like, I want to quit. What could I possibly do that would be cooler than what Buddy Rich just did? That passed in a day or so.
Playing Broadway musicals is cooler. That's all I.
That, yeah. What would Buddy have done in a Broadway music? I wonder if
Oh
he,
my goodness!
can you imagine?
It would have had to been a show about him.
Yeah, which is actually a good idea.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, come on.
You can make some
Cut
money.
the tape. Cut the tape. Because someone will steal our idea.
Yeah, I know. And I on Facebook over the past years, I was like, it'd be a good musical like Rush, 2112, the musical, and people were like, yeah. Then I started seeing like, yeah, Tina, Jagged Little Pill. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I should keep my ideas to myself.
Absolutely should.
Because they had 2112 is, I wouldn't be able to play it, but I'd rather do the Mothership Connection, Parliament, Funkadelic music.
That's yes.
Yes, coming down. Anyway, I digress once again.
Yeah, man. Good ideas, all of them.
So you started taking lessons, and you had various influences like Buddy Rich and Ringo Starr, and then did you start your own band after that, or were you in band?
Yeah. I never really started my own. I was pretty much a sideman from day one. I was way more comfortable with being the hired gun. So I was playing like 3 or 4 different bands, like a country band over here and like a progressive rock thing somewhere else, and then a top 40 cover band. So I was playing as much and as many styles as I could, and playing like jazz groups, like lounge kind of jazz stuff, and earning a living. Actually, by 16, I was making money.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was in bars where I wasn't supposed to be. But fortunately, I had a little bit of mustache hair coming in right around that time. So I'd take my mom's eyebrow thing and then paint in the mustache so I'd look older, so I wouldn't get busted and thrown out of the bar at 16. But yeah, I was playing in bars.
Did you further your studies after that in music, or did you just go out and tour, or what did you do after high school?
I had really good teachers in high school who were also good connections. Growing up in DC was great because all the service bands are there. The Navy band, the Marine Corps band, the Airman Note from the Air Force, the Naval Academy band in Annapolis. So I was studying from all of those guys. When I was studying with these players in high school, eventually they would turn me on to actual gigs because I got to a certain level where they trusted me to go play with some of their peers, and which I did. Right out of high school, I was playing with this guy, Tim Ironman, who was a multi-reed player. He played flute and piccolo and clarinet and alto and tenor saxophone, all on the gig. So we had this band called East Coast Offering around DC, and we'd actually play fusion and make money doing it, and which was amazing. It was like my college. I didn't go to college or anything. Just playing with people older and better than me was my training ground, like out of high school.
That's something that a friend of mine told me years ago. He's always play with people that are better than you.
Yeah.
You'll learn from them and you'll get better in the process.
Absolutely, man.
So you were in fusion bands in the 70s?
Yeah, I did all that, man, like prog rock stuff. Yeah. I played a lot of original music, which is why I suck in a cover band usually, because I never did it that much. I just don't know a bunch of tunes. I was always, for better or worse, working on original stuff with people.
Are you still into fusion at all? Do you still play that kind of stuff?
No, I don't. It's kind of like jazz. I don't play it that much, but I really admire the people who are good at it. So I would prefer to listen rather than play it that much. I found myself, and this was a result of actually being in Nashville all through the 80s, really appreciate great songwriting. And my default is just to work and create music with a good songwriter, or in a band where the original music is happening and you're creating it together. But I prefer to do that.
Did you live in Nashville for a while?
I did, yeah, 84 to 92.
Did you do a lot of session work there?
A little bit. I did a little bit, a lot of demos, but mostly I was on the road with the Gatlin brothers.
Ah, that's right. So
Yeah, man.
tell me about the Gatlin brothers. Tell me about Danny
Yeah.
Gatlin. How did
Well,
you get connected with them?
I was playing with Roger Miller, and Roger Miller, many theater people may know, wrote Big River. He was a composer of Big River, but prior to that, he was a country pop star in the 60s and early 70s. He had a song, King of the Road, and a bunch of silly country songs that he would do, but he was a great Nashville songwriter. And so I was working with Roger for about 3 or 4 years, and we opened for the Gatlin brothers in Tahoe. They just happened to be looking for a new drummer, and they would see me play, liked what I did, and they offered me the job. In May of 84, I said yes to that, and got on that tour bus, and 200 days a year for over 7 years, really. I was playing poker and eating junk food and playing gigs with the Gatlin brothers.
You played on some legendary records. I can't remember the title of it. Elmira Street? Is that what?
Yeah, 88 Amara Street with Danny Gatton. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So some people get the Gatlin brothers, Larry Gatlin, the Gatlin brothers, confused with Danny Gatton because the last names are similar. But I played with both of those acts. Yeah. So Danny's thing was he was a DC guy.
Wait, so Danny Gatton.
Yeah, Danny Gatton is a guitar player out of DC. Larry Gatlin is a country songwriter, singer, and has Gatlin brothers. So yeah, it can be confusing. It was confusing for me for many years. Yeah, it's two different acts, but I played with both of those acts. Now, Danny's thing was he was this telly player, amazing, under-recognized telly player who passed away in the early 90s. And but he was my mentor. Like I said, he taught me to play a shuffle. And yeah, we would play around DC. We did a couple records for Elektra. One of them was at 88 Elmira Street. So yeah, he was an important figure in my musical life.
Being on tour for so many years, what did you learn from all those years of touring? What was the biggest takeaway from those years?
Be consistent. Even on days you don't feel like playing, you have to give 100% every single time you sit down. Because there are some days, like day 300 of being on a tour, I really don't feel good. I really don't feel like doing this today. But you have to remember how lucky you are to be able to do that. And so that's a discipline that really stuck with me. Yeah, just bring it every single time you play. Because touring is grueling, and anybody who's ever done it, whether it's a Broadway show or a band on a big fancy tour bus or in the back of a van, sleeping on the Leslie speaker cabinet, not any of that stuff. It's grueling. It'll kick your butt. And there are days you don't feel like doing it. I was able to navigate that, and I learned a lot. And it's also about getting along with people, being a good team player. Because it's like working on a submarine, like theater. It's like you're working on a submarine. It's a confined space. You see the same people every day, and you must get along.
The Gatlin brothers, are they still around?
Yeah, they still do a little bit of touring, but they're pretty much retired from that. Larry Gatlin will do. He's the older brother. He wrote all the songs, and he was the lead singer. He will still do occasional singles. Maybe he'll go out with a guitar and just do his own thing. But yeah, man, the Gatlins still make music.
After the touring thing, you moved to New York City. Did you still tour?
Yes, I did.
You still toured after you moved up?
A little bit, yeah. The Gatlins had a theater that they got into this thing where they had a theater in South Carolina. I don't know if that's touring or not, but I would leave New York to go play with those guys. And I toured a couple of shows. I did the Beautiful tour for a better part of a year, and just various show tours here and there, but not many bands after that.
What brought you to New York?
Alice Ripley.
Aha. So tell me
Uh,
about how you connected with her and what brought you to New York with her.
Alice and I, no, not many people know this, and this is a kind of a silly story. That show Hee Haw?
Yes.
Yes. It's a country burlesque show, really. And it ran forever. Alice and I met on the final season of Hee Haw because I was in Nashville. The Gatlins had retired from touring, so I was looking for a gig. So I got hired by Charlie McCoy, who was the band leader, to play the final season of Hee Haw. I was the house drummer. And Alice was in Nashville trying to pursue a career as a songwriter because Alice is a very good songwriter. So she was there, had moved there from San Diego. She was in Nashville, and she was hired as a Hee Haw honey. So I know. Here's to that. Hold on.
Hee haw, honey. I gotta look back at those and
Yeah.
see.
Let that sink in, Clay. But yeah, man, I married a Hee Haw honey. So Alice and I got together. We did the 13 weeks of the season, and it ended. And so she said, well, I'm moving to New York. And I said, I like it here in Nashville. I don't want to go because I had put down some roots there, and I was like looking to do more session work. But I fell in love with Alice, and I said, well, I'm going with you. So I did. I'm in January 92. We moved to New York together, and then her career started taking off like pretty much immediately because she had an agent already, and I explored the theater world through her. My entry level into that was quite a bit different probably than many other players because I started getting to know directors, choreographers, other actors, just through socially, through her, as her career progressed. And I said, I could probably do this. I read, I play a variety of styles. This is interesting to me. I want to learn how to do this. Yeah, my first show, she was doing Tommy. My first show was Tommy. And Luther Ricks, the drummer in Tommy at that time, had asked me, have you ever done a Broadway show? And I said, no, but I know the Who. I know what that sounds like. So he said, all right, I'll give you a shot. And God bless him. He gave me a shot. And Joe Church, the conductor, was really helpful. I credit him with teaching me how to do a Broadway show and all the mistakes you can make and all that. So my first show was Tommy.
So how did you prepare for that, not knowing what it takes to actually sub a Broadway show? What was your approach to it?
My approach to it was to just play it every day in real time. I got into this thing because I'd watch. I don't know if many people know this, but you go and when you're going to sub a show, you go and watch the guy in the pit, watch him do the show as many times as you can, really. And I got the charts. He gave me copies of the charts. And in those days, you would go in with a cassette player and record him playing the show. And which isn't the best. It's better now because we have in-ear monitors and mixers and things. But I recorded Luther playing the show. I learned it that way. And I would play it every night that I could in real time. I would wait till 8 o'clock and pretend that I was actually doing it. So my body got into this rhythm of it's 8 o'clock. It's time to play Tommy. So I would practice it, and I think that was really helpful for me, actually, getting my body into this rhythm of virtually playing the show, rehearsing the show at 8 o'clock.
What was your first experience like? Was it
terrifying?
A friend of mine says subbing a Broadway show is like a 2.5-hour heart attack.
It is. You know what it's like? It was like for me, because I was new at it, and it still is this way to some extent. It's like one of those video games, or like when you're at the arcade and you're trying not to run off the road, and you do, and and ugly noises happen. You run off the road. Well, it's a heart attack, and you're in an arcade trying not to run off the virtual road. Yeah, it was a level of concentration that I had never experienced before. And a mind game, again, it still is that. And I think many people who have subbed shows would agree. Most of it is mental, because you prepare, if you've got any sense at all, you prepare as much as you can. But once you get in that environment, of the actual show, you just start, at least I would start noticing things of, man, it's cold in here. It's colder than when I watched it. Was it this dark when I watched the show? Because you're sitting at the guy's drums now and you're not playing along. You are the guy. I would start noticing all these little things. It's like, why is this tom angled this way? Wouldn't it be? And you start picking everything apart. Obviously, that can be a distraction. I learned over time to just really focus on the task at hand and ignore all the things within the environment that would take me out of it. And that took a while. That one thing is the takeaway that I would love to share with other people. It's like when you sub a show, just be aware that there are elements to it when you actually do your first show or your second or your third, that maybe there's a sub conductor, maybe there's an understudy on that day that's going to change the tempo of something, unless it's on a click, and then, or just be ready maybe for an extra long vamp here and there. You know what I'm talking about. It's like there are so many moving parts to a show that any of them could change at any given moment. So I learned to be prepared for that and aware that could happen. You just got to be ready for that, because it's not if, it's when.
Yes.
You know, it will happen, and it will mess with you if you are not prepared for that.
So you did Tommy. That was your first
I
show.
did Tommy.
Did you sub any other shows after that?
I did, yeah. I started subbing at Cats for Ron Tierno, which was obviously a completely different experience. I think I did a pretty good job there because I got asked back. But I mentioned this to you in a previous conversation, and I would like to share this. It's not, I don't know if it's good to advertise this or not, but dude, I got fired as a sub 3 separate times when I was learning to do this.
Wow.
Yes. Wow.
Can you tell me why?
Because I was not prepared. I was inexperienced. Each one was a different circumstance. Generally, it was like I was not that adept at following a conductor. It took me the longest time to do well at following the conductor, and as drummers, we are trained to be in charge of the time and the tempo, and any fluctuations in it, really, that's on us. Not so much in a conductor theater situation. I had trouble following conductors and relinquishing that responsibility, or having that symbiotic relationship that a conductor drummer need to have. It just took me a while. And one, actually, I did, what was it? Kiss of the Spider Woman. That was a difficult show, and it had a lot of odd time stuff in it. And I just simply blew one of the measures, messed it up, and it couldn't get back on track for a few bars. So that got me canned. Yeah, Showboat with Eric Stern, who, to his credit, man, Eric Stern is a great conductor, and he gave me every opportunity to get it right. And I just never really connected with him like he wanted me to. But he's really cool about it. He says, man, it's just not working. And it was heartbreaking, but it was like, at that time, I really appreciated the fact that he was honest with me about it. And then there was like one other thing, which is another example of just not connecting well with the conductor.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and you have to. It has to be right, because that guy is up there, and this also took me a long time to figure out. That guy is up there dealing with 100 more things than you can even imagine. He's dealing with, maybe there's an understudy, maybe this person missed their cue, or they got a hold, and maybe something went wrong with the stage stuff. The hydraulics didn't work on the thing, so you got a hold. I became more aware of what conductors have to deal with as I learned to do this. That's also really important to consider and to be aware of.
Did you land your first Broadway show shortly after subbing around town, or?
Yeah, it was Brooklyn the Musical.
Ah.
Yeah. And again, as I think about it, it was really John McDaniel hired me to do it in Denver. We went to Denver to do an out-of-town run of the thing. But I had known John McDaniel socially through Alice, actually. But But he also knew that I was subbing different shows and I was capable of doing it. But yeah, he hired me to go out to Denver to do the thing. We did it out there on V drums, which was a trip. But and then when it came to Broadway, James Sampliner was the MD. Yeah, I worked with James on that. That was my first show.
Did you have V drums at Brooklyn in New
Mm.
York?
No, that was real drums with Roger Scatero, by the way, playing percussion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Roger played percussion on that.
Ah, wasn't that supposed to be like the next Rent type of thing?
That would have been nice. Yeah.
They couldn't pay the rent for 2
Yeah,
months.
we couldn't pay the rent, and Gucci said, "Now I get out." No, but it had an okay run. It was fun to do, very educational and fun. A really great hang. Putnam was on guitar, and
Mm.
Urio was playing bass. It's just good people that I continue to work with to this day.
After Brooklyn, then what was the next show that you did?
I did. Was it Next to Normal? I took over for Damien Bassman in Next to Normal.
Okay.
I think that was actually my next one that I did on Broadway. Sure, it was.
Now, how did that work out? I know that you were with Alice.
Yeah,
Did you sub on that show?
I did. I subbed for Damien. He taught me the show, and he was moving to Adam's Family.
Yes.
And again, I knew the MD, Charlie Alterman, for some other things that we did. I actually met Charlie at Brooklyn. So yeah, he was the MD. I approached him and said, "Man, I would love to take over for this." So I did. So I did it for a better part of a year, and then Alice and I did the tour as well. I got to know that book really well, which is such a great book, man. To Damien's credit, he created a really amazing book for that show.
Yeah, he was telling me about that in another podcast, and he's a very creative person. I like his mind, and I like the way he approaches things. I guess you went out on the tour with that.
Yeah.
Did you come back and work on one of the other questions I ask a lot of people? Were you part of a workshop of a show that has gone on to become a Broadway show?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of off Broadway stuff as well. I did a show called Bright Lights Big City that never really did that much, but I'm trying to think of a Chaplin. I originated the book for Chaplin that was on Broadway for a short period of time, and Hands on a Hard Body, and certainly Beetlejuice. Anyway, yeah, 3 or 4. 3 or 4 shows that I've originated.
Godspell?
And that Godspell, I didn't. Yeah, how do you approach Godspell? Because do you originate the book for Godspell? You don't, do you? It's like a revival.
Yeah.
But we did our version of it.
How different was your version than the original?
Our version was a little more contemporary musically, because you listen to the original one, it's very 70s. Some of the things were quite similar, but I would say that certainly the staging was different. They had me up in one of those booths above the stage. You know, when you go to the carnival and you throw the ball at the clown and he falls in to the thing?
They had you up there with the
That was the clown, that you threw the ball out. But it looked really cool with the lighting and everything, but I always felt like that guy, like somebody could just throw a ball and sink me in a cup of water. So yeah, and you had to climb a ladder to get up to the thing too. So that's what I remember mostly about that show is the environment. And I always felt bad for my subs because some of them were going, "I got to climb a ladder to sub your show." Yeah. Some of them were not into that at all. But yeah, you were in this little enclosed space. But yeah, I would say musically, which is the question you asked, musically, it was a lot more contemporary. Yeah, I think it rocked a bit harder than the original, you know.
Speaking of, this is really contemporary, but going back over the people that you used to play with, or maybe still do, Phoebe Snow, Kenny Rogers isn't around anymore, I think, right?
No.
Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Tell me how you connected with Paul Simon and Phoebe Snow and Kenny Rogers.
It's one of those things of just networking. One gig leads to another, or one relationship leads to another. And yes, how did I end? Okay, the timeline of that is Danny Gatton. I was playing with Danny, and one of his friends, our friends, was Arlen Roth. Arlen Roth used to do those hot licks videos before there was like YouTube or any of that stuff. He would put out video cassettes of educational videos. Arlen is also a brilliant guitar player and a friend and a fan of Danny's. So I started playing with Arlen through my connection with Danny. Arlen is Paul Simon's guitar teacher. I get a call one day, says, "Hey man, you want to do some workshop stuff with Paul Simon for this musical that he's writing? It's called Cape Man." And yeah, I got called to do that. Paul was looking for someone to do a little more Americana style drumming. So it ended up being me and Robbie Amin, who's just a brilliant all around musician and drummer. And Robbie was doing all the Puerto Rican authentic Latin-y kind of stuff. And I was doing the country-ish train beat kind of stuff, the folksier stuff. That's how I got that gig, because I started working on Cape Man with him, and that went to Broadway. Robbie ended up doing the chair on Broadway, but I would sub for Robbie. But then after that, I started doing songwriter projects with Paul, because he was writing an album, like You're the One or something. I forget the name of the album, but anyway, he was writing this new album, and I was doing all the rehearsals for it, which Steve Gadd ultimately recorded, but that's okay. if you're gonna get replaced, you might as get replaced by Gadd, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Like, yeah.
And that's how I met him, actually. Was when he was in the studio doing the actual album.
Oh, wow.
Paul. Yeah, I met my hero the day he took my gig.
Did you watch him play?
I did, man. It was cool. It was really cool. Yeah, and I played his drums, which was also huge.
That's great.
And just asked him about tuning and stuff like that. And we had a long discussion about back pain, actually. That's my breath to the greatness. It was me and Gadd talking about back pain and how to deal with it.
What did you do, or what have you done to try to avoid injuries by playing your instrument?
I was fortunate enough to have a training from a rudimental drummer. My first drum teacher, actually, Dick Bonifant, was very much into rudiments. Still is. He lives like an hour and a half from where I am right now, and I still see him. But I owe everything to Dick Bonifant, because he gave me a solid rudimental training, and he would be very watchful of my hand technique early on, and he got me playing properly and stressed relaxation. The faster you go, the more relaxed you should be, or the more difficult something is, approach it from a relaxed point, because I think we humans tend to go, if we approach something that is intimidating or difficult, we tense up, and I'm going to get this thing. But he put me in the other direction. He says, that's not how to approach it. So I had very good training, rudimental training, which I actually pass on today. I teach still, and I make sure all of my students have good hand technique, and that's, for me, priority one. Because a lot of them want to come in and just do blast beats or play all this fast stuff. And then slow down, take the pad, put it on the snare drum. Here we go, single stroke roll, double strokes. Now, you're a little tense there. Let's get rid of the tension. Stop. So I stress that. So the answer to that would be just really stress good hand technique and relaxation, and just really approach everything from a relaxed perspective. As you're learning, especially if you're learning something new, or especially if you're trying to go faster with a particular sticking or any kind of groove that you're trying to work up. Just break it down, ease into it. Tommy Igoe actually has a lot of valuable information. I think he has a video about soft hands, approaching your technique from a soft perspective.
What advice would you give someone who's interested in playing Broadway shows?
I would say, and I have actually mentored a couple of people, and I'm getting more and more questions and inquiries about that from younger people, like getting out of college, or people who want to come to New York and pursue this. I give them the advice of keep a low overhead, because it's New York. get a good place to live, get your little oasis happening, because it can be a very stressful, intimidating, troublesome place to live on occasion. So keep a low overhead, get a good place to live, get a rehearsal studio, somewhere you can actually play real drums. And I tell them, do every gig you can get your hands on. It's really, the Broadway thing, I think, is about community more than anything else. Get yourself involved in the community and get to know composers, get to know musical directors, however that, whatever that means to you. Do workshops of things for low bread if you have to. Sub for people. Now, find out who is receptive to a stranger reaching out to them, because not all of us are. I actually am. I welcome that to a certain degree, but find out who will talk to you and who you can go watch play their show in a pit. Again, not everyone is about that, and that's okay, but find out about those who are. And you'll get a lot of valuable information just from sitting in a pit and watching someone play their show.
If somebody wants to inquire about watching you play or me play, how would you recommend them going about it?
Social media. So many of us are on social media. You can message them, the Facebook Messenger. It's also one of those things of somebody knows somebody who knows me. I just get email. I have a website with my email on it. Seek that out, those kinds of things. And yeah, social media, I think, really helps a lot. People's websites, things like that. That's a good way to connect with people.
Let me ask you a kind of a personal question. Is there some way, somebody that has contacted you and then turned you off? I don't know if I want this person to come watch me play. Did they ask you in a way that you're like, I don't know about this person?
Yeah, not yet. But Larry Lilly actually has some good stories about that. I'm sure it's happened to other people, but I know that it's happened with Larry. He actually posted something one time about that. And things not to do when you're approaching someone to sub. And I have not experienced it. Every single person that's approached me about this has been respectful and professional and earnest. I really feel lucky about that, because I know there are people out there who just don't get it and are full of all this bravado and say, I'm badass and I will play the show better than anybody. And it's, yeah, it's easy now. This community, man, and this surprised me, frankly, because many people have this perception of New York as being cutthroat and, my God, we're shooting each other in the head and everything's on fire and it's just chaos. But then this particular community is one of the most welcoming, supportive communities that I've ever been involved in. And that includes Nashville, that includes LA, DC, where I grew up, man. This community, it's almost like we're at war, but we're bonding together to keep each other alive and keep each other safe and keep each other moving forward. And that's real. At least my experience has been that.
Yeah.
In 28 years that I've been in New York. A word about a friend of ours. You may know Josh Samuels.
Yes.
Josh Samuels is a great drummer, great percussionist, a good man, and a good friend of mine. Two things about Josh Samuels is this thing that you mentioned about the competition. I'm about to go in on actually a new chapter in my musical career. I'm going to audition for the Radio City Christmas show, which I have never done. I've never gotten around to it. It wasn't anything that was particularly in a hurry to do, although I know it's going to be good for me. It's going to kick my butt because it's an incredibly difficult, it requires a certain set of skills. It's a dance show, like the ultimate dance show, really. So I'm going in for this, and so is Josh. And Josh has done it for years. And I called him, I said, man, what do I need to know for this audition I'm going in? He gave me the details, even though he and I are both competing for the drum chair. And competing is not even the right word at this level. That is what you're talking about. We were both going in for the drum chair. And I said, man, I really appreciate your help on this, because I know that you're going for it as well. But he's also going for the percussion book because he's that good. But he said, man, yeah, just remember this. we're all keeping each other alive here. We're all supporting each other. Exactly what you said, Clayton, about if you don't get it or I don't get it, we can sub for each other. And
Right.
also, it's an honor. It's an honor to be selected to audition for this thing. It just is. Look at it that way, and then go in and do the audition. Yeah, no matter what happens, it's a positive thing. It's not like I won, you lost kind of deal. It's, oh, okay, you got it, so let's restructure this, and now I'll sub for you, and good, congratulations. And that's how things are from my perspective in this community. And there's
I,
competition, yeah, but it's a healthy competition, and you need to think on a larger scale. It's just, I didn't get this, damn that guy that did. It's no, that guy is going to need subs. And so you pat him on the back and say, well done, man. If you need subs, let me know.
I
That's
just
how things are done. But, oh, here's this thing that's more my style, really. But it is, I'm very much looking forward to doing it because it is going to kick my ass. And
yes,
I do need a kicking.
it's not
Yeah,
easy.
it is not easy, man. It's a dance show. I admired, first of all, dancers. God, they're superhuman. But drummers who do the dance thing really well, or anybody who plays that particular show successfully, it's really a different skill. And yeah, hey, young drummers, check that out. That's something that you've never experienced before. The dance thing is completely different from, it's not about so much playing grooves or not about anything other than supporting those dancers up there on that stage. That's priority one.
One thing about Josh, he contacted me when I was at uh, Altar Boys,
Oh boy,
and
yeah.
he he reached out to me. We went to lunch, and he was eager to get in, and he seemed like a really cool guy. And I had moved on to do Memphis the musical, and one of my subs, Mo Roberts, wound up taking over the chair, and Josh eventually wound up subbing for Mo, and they had a great relationship. And then when I found out that Josh got his own show with Beetlejuice, I think that was his first Broadway show, correct?
Yeah, yeah. He
And I,
played percussion there with me. Yeah.
and I was so happy. And the thing
Yeah.
about it, like you said, as I'm more happy to see people finally get their chance to be a Broadway musician. It's
Yeah.
fantastic because I know how great a gig it is.
I feel exactly the same way about that particular guy, about Josh, man. And I will tell all young people who want to do this, talk to Josh Samos because he did it right. Josh came to me as well and respectfully presented himself as somebody who could do the job. And he said, please give me a shot. It was Godspell. He wanted to sub for me at Godspell. I didn't know him from Adam. Get that? See what I did there? Godspell, Adam, the whole. Sleep.
I'm gonna add that in there.
Although that's New Testament, but whatever. But I didn't know Josh, man. He came to me and he said, "You please let me sub for you on this show. I've done this and that, and I'll do a great job. I'll be the best sub." And it wasn't an arrogant thing. It was like, I will do a good job for you. I will make you look good. And so I gave him a shot, man. He ended up being one of my, be careful, Shannon, one of my best subs.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, man. He did just an outstanding job, and Charlie, the MD, loved him, and yeah. So Josh did it right and continues to do it right. So that's why he's successful. And yeah, we had the best time in the Beetlejuice pit. So I really hope that we get a chance to do that again soon.
So tell me about Beetlejuice and how you approach that show and approach the book. Obviously, did you write the book pretty much?
I created the book. As far as I know, there were other players who did various workshops of it. I don't remember exactly who, but that's the way this works. So there's so many incarnations, so many workshops and developmental presentations of a show that there might be 5 or 6 drummers who do the thing before you ever get your hands on it. But yeah, there were a couple versions of workshops and presentations of Beetlejuice prior to me getting my hands on it. Chris Kugel, who you worked with
That's
at the
correct.
Old Globe Theater, doing the
Last goodbye.
Roman Last Goodbye. Yeah, was that cool? I bet that was really fun.
I tell you, one of the cool things about networking, that's how we connected because
Yeah,
you hurt your foot, correct?
yeah, had a foot injury.
And I don't know how my name got thrown in there, but it was
Clayton Craddock, man. What do you mean?
Who else could do this show? Clayton.
Clayton. Well, I knew you from anyway. We're going on a tangent here, but yeah, you and I knew each other because I programmed the drums for Ultra Boys.
Oh, really?
I programmed the beat drums, yeah, and I was around you for a little bit, but yeah, that was our first meeting. Anyway, last goodbye, Old Globe Theater, blah blah blah.
See, yeah, I love that. First of all, that show was it was cool. I realized again, you work in theater, you're going to run into people from time to time.
Yeah.
Now, the director came up to me, and I was just sitting there reading the book, and then during a break, and he came up to me. He said, "Hi, my name is Alex." I'm like, "Hey, dude," not realizing who he was, but that's probably a good thing. I don't want to like, oh my god, this is I forgot his last name, but he's a great director. He wound up doing Rocky. I just remember him and Sonia. I can't remember her last name, but she went on to finally be the choreographer for Moulin Rouge. And I look up and I was like, oh my God.
Right.
So you run into people from time to time. And then Chris, I met him through you and then going out to the Old Globe.
Yeah.
So you're going to run into people from time to time. It's always good to be nice to people and know how to work together with people, because eventually, again, your reputation will get around. And if you're easy to work with and you get the job done, it could lead to many other things. But Chris was great to work with, and I unfortunately, I know you were supposed to do that gig, but I'm thankful that I did, because I realized how beautiful San Diego is. I don't know if you've.
Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. The Old Globe.
Oh, it's a great experience.
Yeah, I did Almost Famous out there a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So anyway, Clayton, Chris Kukl called me to do Beetlejuice, and I did some workshops of it. We did it out of town in D.C. Yeah. Also, Alex Timbers, a brilliant director. Yeah, so much fun to work with. Yeah. This thing about giving it 100% every time you sit down, like you just mentioned, you don't know who's around or don't know who's in the room, but be nice to everyone and treat everyone with respect. But the thing about playing well all the time, no matter where you are or what time of day it is, I mean, it can be 2:00 in the morning on Bleecker Street in some blues joint, right? One thing I learned, for two people stand out. One is Gary Seligson and one is Sean Pelton. Every time I've watched Gary Seligson play anything, he is 100% passionately involved with every note of that music. And that really struck me. And that's something that I absorbed from being around Gary. He's just one of those, I'm sure we all do. But seeing him do a tour, Alice was touring Les Mis, and Gary was the drummer. And I would go out and visit Alice on the road and sit with Gary, watching him do the show. And it just blew me away. Every single performance, he was in it. And same thing, man. I used to play all these blues joints when I first moved to New York. And Sean Pelton and I were running up and down Bleecker Street playing with blues bands. I literally passed Sean wheeling his strap case to another gig, and I was on my way to one. And I would go watch him play, man, with 5 people in the audience. And it's 1:00 in the morning. And he brought that shit. It was brilliant. And he always does that. He's just completely engaged. That's something that really affected me, especially with my journey in New York. No matter what time of day, no matter what club you're in or where you're playing or how many people are in the audience, just do your A stuff every time. Because it matters.
What's the most difficult show that you've played on so far in New York City?
Miss Saigon.
Really?
Yeah.
What made it so difficult?
Subbing for Howie Joins, who gave me the opportunity. Thanks, Howie, for subbing on that show. It was the drum book, because there's a drum book and a percussion book. It was a lot of odd time stuff, a lot of mallet choreography, because there's like a bunch of gongs and specific gongs to cues and things like that. So up to that point, I had never done a show that had so many different things you had to hit. Okay. As a matter of fact, one of my finest moments was hitting a gong with a brass bell mallet. Yeah. I picked up the wrong mallet, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm going to miss the cue. I picked up something and I hit this gong, and it was a brass bell mallet. So that's a pretty sound, Clayton, I got to say.
Oh, man.
It would
Yeah.
ding. When the conductor, Bob Billick, I guess, I don't remember who it was, but the conductor just, he's used to it, man. He played the thing, so he just finally went, and I didn't get a note about it or anything. He's, yeah, you screwed up. I know it. You know it.
Uh, I,
We all
about,
know it.
I forgot about notes. When you sub a
Oh,
show, you
notes.
get notes. I didn't even bring that up. So
You want notes, right? You want notes.
yes,
Yeah. At first, I used to go, man, why get a life, man? Why are we talking about the show? The show's over. Yeah, yeah. All right, I'll whatever. I would maybe that's why I got fired 3 times. But you do want notes. It used to bug me a little bit. It was like I'm just I just subbed the show. I'm a nervous wreck. I just really want to drink and I just want to leave the building. But yeah, I would get these notes and it would be like it took me a while to really appreciate the note thing. They are essential. The guy's on your side, whether it appears that way or not. He may be saving his own ass or just trying to, but he's helping you, man. He's trying to help you become part of the whole thing. So
I
yeah,
think
you want to know.
I think it's fascinating with certain musical directors. The last revival of Cats, when I was subbing for Bill Lanham, and we
Mm-hmm.
get through the entire show, and he'd be like, "Yeah, on Mr. Mistopheles, measure 62, the second half. Could you please do a crescendo?" I'm like, "Oh my god, how do you remember that?" And I remember I
Because
screwed up on that. But they're
right,
like so detail oriented, and you have to make sure that you pay attention to those details because they do matter.
they absolutely do. And the guy's done the show 8,000 times.
Right.
Just, oh, here comes man. I hope this guy gets this right. He's a sub. Nope, he blew it. So I'll
Right.
mention that. Now, they get their little sticky note and they're conducting and they write the little thing while they're
Yeah.
and on a practical level, do not question or comment on the notes. The proper response to every single note that you get is thank you. Yeah. This I learned. Actually, I learned that from Alice. I
Oh,
learned
really?
learned that attention to actors know that stuff better than we do. I'm sorry, they just do because they get way more notes than we do ever. Yeah, Alice said, yeah, the proper response to a note is thank you.
Mm.
That's it. That's it. No, no, yeah, I thought we were doing it. I thought we were doing it the way we did it rehearsal. But the last time we did it is no, none of that. None of that. Shut up. None of that matters in the moment. It's not relevant. At that performance, at that moment, the man in charge, man or woman in charge says, this is what needs to be improved. And you go, let's say it together. Thank you. Okay, so
Yes, please. May I have
really,
another?
may I have another slap in the face and a crushed ego? But I'm telling you, man, that's some of the best advice I can offer to someone getting into it. Thank them for the note. Period. End of discussion. Literally.
What are some things drummers should never do in a Broadway pit as a sub or as the regular?
Come in unprepared. Practice it until you can't screw it up. Preparation. Do not come in unprepared. Do not come in compromised, stoned, drunk, whatever. I can't do that. But it just seems like a good idea, right? Yeah, have a clear head, and because that way you can anticipate anything that might go wrong. And again, it's not if, it's when. Shit changes in that pit. Things can turn on a dime. Yeah, just be prepared, be clear headed. Yeah, be respectful and kind to everybody in the building. The moment you walk in that building, be cool to everybody. They're just doing their job, and they've done that job 600-700 times at least before you ever walk in. Yeah, be respectful and good to everybody that you see, and realize that there's a ton of really talented people in that building. No matter what job it is, stage hands, wardrobe people, hair people, stage managers. Everybody is at the top of their game, or else they would be in that building. So remember that, and you should be honored to be there because of that.
What are some things drummers should always do playing Broadway shows?
Yeah, preparation again. Boy, that's I don't know. I'm focused on what not to do because of the consequences in my life. Yeah, just You should always remember that shows close, with a couple of exceptions so far. But yeah, all of this is temporary. And remember that your subs are valuable just because we've all subbed. Like a friend of mine, Jim Hirschman, guitar player, said we're all subs. It's just that every now and then one of us gets a gig. So remember that your subs are really valuable. Always treat your subs with respect and understanding, and be as helpful as you can to your subs. Because on a self-serving level, down the road, you'll be subbing for them. There's that. But also just as good human behavior, because they're under a lot of pressure, and they don't have the luxury of having been in that room learning the show from day one. They have not played the show 600 times. Their first shot might be their only shot, depending on the conductor and the environment. Yeah, that comes to mind first. Be good to your subs.
Rhythm Tech, Toka Percussion, Sabian, Gibraltar, DW, Vic Firth. You still use all that stuff, or you use other?
I do, man. Every now and then. Don't tell John Good, but I sneak in a Ludwig snare drum every now and then. We just make good snare drums, but so does DW. Yeah, I still heartily endorse the DW line. As a matter of fact,
Nah, we're talking.
Come on. Yeah.
Now, why DW drums and not some other drum company?
I like their attention to detail. I like the craftsmanship. I've gotten the tour from John Good out in Oxnard probably 5-6 times now. And every time, man, I'm just taken with how much they care about what they put out there. I like the resonance of DW toms in particular. And I just got a good relationship with John Good. I've been with those guys since the 80s. I have a more intimate relationship with those guys than any of the other companies that I endorse. It's a little more of a passive relationship with some of the others, which I should change. But mostly, I'm about just on a personal level. I really like John Good and what he does out there. I've been to his house, and he does like a Monday Night Football thing with all the drum stars in L.A. I've been to that a couple of times. There's like a social connection with that. Anyway, but the product, the drums are amazing in my view. Yeah, I just like what they do, and I like their dedication to good craftsmanship.
Did you have DW drums in the pit of Beetlejuice?
I do, yeah. I do. I did. Yeah. I had this beautiful maple kit that John made for me. And yeah, I've used them, God, man, since 86 on everything. And when it wasn't V drums, I've been with those guys since the 80s, yeah. When there was like not 100 endorsers, there was like just local LA guys mostly. So yeah, I've watched them grow and become this iconic company now that owns everything. So, well done.
This question may or may not be on the podcast or any videos, but is Beetlejuice coming back? Have you heard anything?
I don't officially know, Clayton. I've heard things here and there. I hope it does. Let's just put it that way. My intentions are to move back to New York. It depends on how this audition goes for Radio City, but my intentions are I'm in Florida now. My intentions are to move back to New York to hopefully play Beetlejuice at some point. Is that vague enough?
That's good. I hope you all come back. I heard that story. Yeah, I don't know all the details, but I know the business. When certain shows aren't doing very well, the stop clause.
Yeah, you know that deal that we went through. Yeah.
Memphis got kicked out of our theater, the Schubert Theater, in 2012 because we weren't selling a certain amount of tickets, and the theater owners can say, you got to leave because we're going to bring in somebody else. So you really don't have too much control over your gig and your life. You just hope that it's going to be selling enough so that you're going to be around for a long time. But it's unfortunate when they kick out what we thought was a very well-selling show, and they put something else.
It was, man. Yeah, ours was, and the timing was bad because we had a really sluggish start and not great reviews. a joke there for a few months. But then it turned into this Rocky Horror style thing where people were showing up in droves dressed like the characters in our show, and it became this cult following. The social media thing kicked in, and then all of a sudden we're a hit, and then about that time that the stop clause on us was still in place. So here comes Music Man. So they kicked us out, and yeah, it happens. By the way, speaking of Memphis, I got to tell you this: when I was playing Next to Normal, our theater was right next door to where you were, and I would hear you in some of the quieter moments of Next to Normal, of which there are many. I could actually hear you
Really?
on the other side of the wall playing, and I was thinking, man, Clayton sounds like he's having fun over there. Because our show is all about like depression and bipolar, crazy stuff, and there were some really dark, desperate moments in our show, and you're like over there, yeah, go Clayton, go. But this has been a total joy, man. It's good to see your face, and hopefully, this virtual thing is fine, but I hope to see you in person and
Man,
on the
one
street,
last,
man.
one last thing. Where can people find you?
ShannonFordMusic.com.
Great.
That's my website. Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon Ford, for joining me on my podcast, and I will see you soon.
You got it, brother. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too.
Thanks, Clayton.
All right, bye.